All right, let's just get right into it. If decarbonization is where we're all headed, then procurement is the steering wheel that's going to get us there. For years, RFPs and logistics were just a race to the bottom, right? Whoever was cheapest won. Well, we're here to tell you why, in 2026, that playbook is officially toast.
And let me be really blunt about this. The days of the cheap and dirty carrier are over. Finished. Why? Because with the carbon taxes and all the regulations that are hitting us right now, high carbon is no longer cheap. In fact, buying dirty means you're buying a massive financial risk.
That's exactly right. So let's just picture this for a second. It's April 15th, 2026. Carbon taxes aren't some abstract idea anymore. They are a real line item on the profit and loss statement today. And that has completely changed the conversation from an environmental one to a purely financial one. Carbon is cash. And this is the playbook you need to manage it.
So the first thing that had to change was the very foundation of our industry, the request for proposal, the RFP. It has been completely torn down and rebuilt to deal with this new reality.
Now take a look at this, because this is where the math really changes. We're now putting a 30% weight on a carrier's sustainability score. 30%! That means a carrier who's actually more expensive on paper but has a way lower carbon footprint can now win the bid. And let's be clear, this isn't about feeling good. This is about protecting the bottom line from carbon costs down the road.
And you know, to even get to that scoring stage, vague promises just don't cut it anymore. We are way past asking, so do you have a sustainability policy? The new mandate is all about proof. Carriers have to provide hard, verifiable data and show us a clear roadmap for how they're transitioning to clean assets. If they can't, they're not even in the running.
And that proof, it has a name. We're talking about GLEC-compliant reporting. Think of it as the single global standard for calculating emissions in logistics. It's the new non-negotiable. If a carrier can't give us data in this format, they can't bid. It is literally that simple. Transparency is the new barrier to entry.
Okay, so once you have all this new data, it completely changes how we calculate cost. It's just not about the freight quote anymore. We've had to completely rethink what the bottom line even means.
What we're seeing is a major shift from what we used to call total cost of ownership to a new idea, total carbon ownership. And how we do this is by applying an internal price on carbon. We are finally treating carbon emissions like a real currency inside the business, because outside the business, that's exactly what it has become.
Okay, let's just walk through this really quick. Look at carrier A. They're the low bidder, right? $10,000? But look at their emissions, 15 tons of CO2. When we apply our internal carbon price of $100 a ton, their real cost suddenly becomes $11,500. Now look at carrier B. Their quote is higher, but their emissions are just a third of carrier A's. So what's their real cost? You guessed it, $11,500. The so-called cheaper carrier is actually a huge liability.
And that's the whole point. Choosing carrier B isn't just about today's P&L. It's pure risk management. You're making a smart bet. You're hedging against the fact that we all know carbon taxes are only going to get more expensive and more volatile. This is about future-proofing the entire business.
You know, this kind of long-term thinking also means the nature of our agreements has to completely change. The whole focus is shifting away from just simple one-off transactions. Now it's all about the structure of the contracts. We're building real partnerships.
And the centerpiece of these new partnerships is something we call the carbon clause. This isn't just fluffy language, it has real teeth. First, a part of a carrier's payment is directly tied to them hitting their emission reduction targets. Second, it gives us the right to actually audit their primary fuel data. Like the slide says, transparency isn't a favor anymore, it's a contractual requirement.
And to make any of this work, the old way, the 12-month spot market contracts, they're obsolete. They're dead. I mean, think about it. You can't possibly ask a supplier to make a multi-million-dollar investment in green trucks or shits if you're only going to guarantee them business for a year. It's just not a serious way to do business.
So, what we've done is move to multi-year agreements. We're talking 3 to 5 years typically. This longer-term commitment is absolutely essential. It gives our partners the security they need to de-risk these massive investments in things like hydrogen-powered ships. Basically, we share the risk so we can share the reward.
Of course, not every supplier is at the same point in their journey. So Smart Procurement now uses a tiered system to manage the network. Tier 1s are your strategic partners. You're co-investing with them. Tier 2s are the ones who are willing to change, and we support them with those longer contracts. And Tier 3? Well, those are the high-emission legacy carriers. In 2026, they are being actively and systematically phased out.
So let's wrap this all up. What's the final takeaway here? This whole new world of green procurement, it's not about spending more money. It's about spending your money smarter. It's about buying your company's future, not just your next shipment.
And that's because in a world that is actively and rapidly decarbonizing, there's really only one currency that matters in the long run, and that is carbon efficiency. It's become the ultimate measure of how well you're managing your finances and your operations. They're one and the same now. But securing these green assets with new contracts brings up the next huge question, doesn't it? What assets are we actually buying? What kind of fuel is going inside the engine? Biodiesel versus methanol? Do you have any idea what fuel you're actually buying for 2030? Because the choice you make right now is going to lock you in for a decade.
So we're going to leave you with one last thought. The choice really is crystal clear. If you aren't buying for carbon today, you are actively buying a liability for tomorrow. So the only question left is, which side of the ledger do you want to be on?